Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Jim Morrison, and with me, as always, is our host, Hal Humphreys. Hey, Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited today. We're talking to JoAnn Apostol of Deer Creek Appraisals, but we're talking about something special that the state of Colorado is doing that we hope some other state boards get on board with. But let me bring in JoAnn and let's start getting chatting.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great, JoAnn. How are you today?
Very good. Just got off the road on an inspection.
Yeah, and if I recall right, you said you've been on the road for quite some time.
Yeah, I left about 7:30 this morning, so it's a long day.
I hear you. Well, how did you survive Las Vegas and the Appraisal Summit?
I thought the summit was great. I
I
mean,
thought
I'm
it was fantastic.
always so tired after conferences because it's just go, 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 go. But really interesting presentations this year.
I thought it was good. The summit is one of my favorite events of the year. It's good to be there with all the other folks from the NAA. It's always good to see you there. So yeah, I thought it was a fantastic show. I will say that I am still trying to catch up on sleep from being on the road for so long.
We didn't even get much chance to connect over the summit.
I know.
Waved at each other in passing.
That's the way it goes sometimes. Hey, JoAnn, let me ask you this. For the folks that don't know who you are, give us a real quick summary of who you are, what you do, how you got into this business.
Well, I'm a certified residential appraiser. I started in 2000. I began teaching appraisal courses in 2005. I became USPAP certified in 2008. And so I have taught all the licensing courses through certified res for over 17 years. And with the USPAP, then I do USPAP consulting as well with people that are under investigation or have come out of disciplinary hearings. I've actually worked with the Attorney General's office in Colorado on some cases.
That is absolutely fascinating. The work that we do when we get to do some consulting to help out appraisers who have had claims against them is incredibly rewarding work. How much do you like doing that kind of work?
I actually, in my former life, Hal, I don't know if you know this, but I was a 7th grade math teacher for 15 years. So the teaching is probably, we always joke, my highest and best use. And so the USPAP consulting and working with people that have had disciplinary actions taken against them to help them be better appraisers is very rewarding, very rewarding.
Yeah, I love it. All right, JoAnn, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm going to do a real quick break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Solidifi is one of the nation's most trusted valuation and title partners. With their proprietary technology and extensive network, Solidifi delivers industry-leading quality, transparency, efficiency, and scale to the largest mortgage lenders in the U.S. Their marketplace of independent, qualified field professionals makes the homeownership experience extraordinary every time. Visit solidifi.com for more information and stay connected with their latest news on LinkedIn.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz, and I've got JoAnn Apostol on the show with me today. JoAnn is with Deer Creek Appraisals out in Colorado. JoAnn, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I've learned that Colorado's Appraisal Board is taking maybe a little bit of a different look at disciplinary actions and how to handle them with appraisers. There are a lot of states around the country taking looks at how they deal with disciplinary actions. I think the Colorado Board different look is a pretty interesting way to approach it. I don't want you to speak out of school or break any kind of confidentiality, but what is different about Colorado's approach and how it works?
Well, So Al, you're familiar with the voluntary matrix and they've got a score of 1 to 5. So when they look at the voluntary matrix and those people that have the lowest things, they actually have an education alternative, and that would be for the most minor. If you've got people that have more than one investigation or go higher on that scale, not to the fives, but in the threes and the fours, then they have two types of things that they can um, assign to appraisers. One's called a work product review, and the other is called supervision. Now, the state of Colorado will not approve or have an approved list of people that appraisers coming out of discipline can work with. And so the appraiser has to go find somebody for these work product reviews and supervisions that will sign off and send a report to the state. So they've actually sent people my way when they've been difficult finding people for residential. And so the work product review is the lesser of the two, as far as the work for the appraiser who's coming out of that discipline. And the appraiser pays for this contractor, not the state. And so the work product review is you send a list of reports that you've done in the last month, and they'll assign like 2 reports a month for 2 months, for 3 months. And so then I get those reports and I review them, and I get to put my, so to speak, red pen to the paper, although I don't use a red pen. I'm not quite that mean, but I do the reviews to compliance with USPAP. And that gets sent back to the appraiser. And during this process, they have to continue to make revisions until I'm willing to sign off on that report. And so it's not really a time crunch. The supervision, however, is much more in depth. As a supervisor, basically, it's like taking on a trainee. And I get to go through absolutely everything. I attend every inspection with the appraiser. And when I start initially, when I'm working with people, and I only work on one at a time, because somebody asked me, it's like, no, that's too much. You can't do more than one, because basically it's a process that builds upon itself, if that makes sense. So whatever we get through the first time. And so once we look at the property, we go back to their office or my office and we do research together. We extract adjustments together. We do the market analysis together. And so it's every step, and it's basically a retraining to find out what their processes are and how they can improve those processes to be able to produce USPAP credible compliant reports.
This seems like such a common sense approach to dealing with a complaint against an appraiser. Finding someone and making them take education doesn't really get them better necessarily, but taking the time to look over their work, offer suggestions, get them up to speed on USPAP compliance, or the more onerous version of working with them. That's a mentor situation.
Yeah, it does turn into a mentor situation. And what I find is a lot of the people that I work with through this process have multiple disciplinary actions, and they've already been given education, and the education hasn't fixed things. So this is the same problems when the investigators go through their work files and their reports. The problems are repeating. So the education didn't really do what they wanted it to do. And with the supervision, they can't release the report to the client until I give approval on that final report.
Wow.
So it will hold up the process. So this is, you got to get in, you got to get moving, you got to work. And I've worked with a lot of people that are just very thankful for a different look into their processes and understanding how you can do things a little bit differently. And it doesn't take much, honestly, a lot of the times.
Interesting process. Let me do this. I'm going to take a real quick break. We'll hear from one of our sponsors, and then we'll come back and finish this conversation.
LIA Administrators and Insurance Services, serving valuation professionals since 1978. We provide E&O insurance with a commitment to superior customer service, outstanding liability education, and unmatched claim defense, benefiting over 10,000 real estate professionals nationwide. Explore our exclusive appraiser liability education by Peter Christensen and cost-effective seminars designed to foster your growth. Our underwriters, with an average of 26 years of experience each, are dedicated to supporting appraisers. Visit liability.com to discover how LIA can safeguard your business.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. I'm Hal Humphreys, your host. I'm joined today by JoAnn Apostol. JoAnn is with Deer Creek Appraisals out in Colorado, and we're talking about a little bit of a different approach that Colorado's Appraisal Board is taking with the complaint process. Just before the break, JoAnn, we were talking about kind of what the process looks like. One of the things I've noticed when I teach a class or when I work with an appraiser who is going through a situation where they've had a complaint filed against them, oddly, I learn so much in both those situations. What are some of the things that you've learned through this process?
Well, one of the major things that I've learned is that I end up being less of an appraisal coach and more of an emotional coach. Going through a disciplinary process is heartbreaking. People think I'm a bad appraiser, and they're not. In fact, I was just talking with one today, and it's like trying to get them to the point where they have some self-confidence back in what they're doing after one, two, maybe multiple. And different people react to the whole process very differently. Some have been extremely resistant, and others are open and welcoming. And that's the attitude that I think is going to be the most helpful, is knowing that nobody's perfect, right? And understand that a lot of the people that end up there weren't trained well, unfortunately.
Right.
And so it's a retraining, and it's a positive step, because when you come out of this process, you should be a better appraiser and at least be able to communicate your assignment results in a better manner.
Yeah, I like that. You know, the idea, so I've worked with a number of appraisers who had complaints filed against them. One of my dear friends, one of my mentors in the business, had a complaint filed against him years ago, and he is certified general, member of the Appraisal Institute, very talented appraiser, and the complaint caused him to have a crisis of confidence. It made him question everything. Turns out the complaint was bogus, but still, getting that letter in the mail saying you've done a bad thing, it does cause a crisis of confidence for a lot of people. And it occurs to me, JoAnn, you know, what you're doing is what a lot of appraisal coaches do for a fee to people who are trying to be better appraisers. And I think what happens is we're appraisers. A lot of us work either by ourselves or in a very small shop. Many of us work out of an office in the house. We don't have the opportunity to bounce ideas off of our friends, to ask peers what they're doing. Sidebar, that's why I think it's so important that we go to conferences like the Appraisal Summit we just got back from.
Well, or live education,
Yes.
right? Or local appraisal organizations. We talk about building your team of people,
Yes.
right? I mean, you and I have good connections, but I'm always looking for that person that knows more than I, if that makes sense, right?
And
Build
for me,
that
that's not
team.
very hard. Look, I think the option of doing this process as opposed to being spanked with a fine and, you know, some remedial education that literally across the country I've heard regulators say they give them remedial education. They will go to the cheapest, fastest online education, get a certificate, turn it in, and they haven't done anything. They haven't learned anything. So I think this process is really good. And thank you for taking the time to share it with us. And thank you for kind of explaining it to us. Anything else you'd like to say about the program in Colorado?
Well, I think that the program in Colorado really is more about being pro appraiser in the discipline and helping the appraisers out, so to speak. You know, I mean, it's an administrative process, so it's still a crappy process to go through, right? There's no innocent until you're proven guilty, like most people think. It's
Right.
you're guilty and you get to fight for your innocence. But um, you know, when they've had multiple complaints or there's significant issues with what they find, this is giving a leg up to the appraiser that's under discipline to not, you know, my goal is to work with them so that they never get a complaint again. Okay, and now, once they leave my tutelage, I can't do anything about it, but you know, I always joke how I'm sure you drive through the mountains and there's two kinds of drivers in the mountains, those that have hit a deer and those that are going to hit a deer. And so when I work with appraisers, you know, the old adage is I've been turned in the state, who hasn't been or who isn't going to. And so, you know, when I'm teaching this, I try to teach a proactive approach to ensure the work file is adequate when you create it so that you have that information if and when you get turned in on a report.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, look, I'm just going off script just a little bit. I think the new UAD report builder has the potential to, and the fact that the GSEs are asking for appraisers to actually show their work in the reporting process, I think that has the potential to set it up so that appraisers can start thinking about these things in terms of, oh, someone's actually going to see my math, not just, I know this adjustment is this, I'm going to say it's in the work file, I'll put it in the work file later, you forget about it, you get on to the next thing, and then someone makes a complaint, and you're like, oh, I've got to build the work file. I am hopeful that the new UAD, I know a lot of people are terrified about it, but I've seen some really interesting things from the GSEs over the past couple of weeks. I'm hopeful that that can help some appraisers get their head around how to show their work and avoid some of these problems.
Yeah, well, and you know, there was a presentation at the summit. Is this an art or is it science? And I think that it's truly a combination because you have to have the data science behind it in order, and then the art is really how you present that argument in your report. And so I have not really studied the new UAD, but I think that the increase in the analysis per area is, or section of the report, is going to be a struggle and a challenge for a bunch of people to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But once they get the hang of it, I think that they'll be good.
I think you're right about that. JoAnn, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I have a sneaking suspicion, JoAnn, that Jim Morrison is going to pop in here and tell us we have an anonymous appraiser question to deal with. Jim, is that true?
We do have an anonymous appraiser question. If anybody has any questions that they want to send to get our experts' advice, reach out to us at comments@appraisalbuzz.com or comment on the YouTube post as well. So this one says, I could use some help with this one. I did an appraisal on a multifamily house, 2-family, 3 floors. The first floor is Unit 1, self-explanatory. The second and third floor are being called Unit 2. Here's my question. The second floor has 2 separate entrances, ingress and egress entry doors. The third floor has a separate open entry. There's no direct connection between the 2 levels. Can I combine the second and third floors into a unit if they have no internal connection?
JoAnn?
Wow. Well, I'm going to be the best appraiser and give you the appraiser answer. It depends, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're asked to be ANSI compliant, right? The question is where are all those utilities? Where are the kitchen? What location are all of the things that are necessary for it to be a separate unit located? Is it on the second floor? Is it on the third floor? Is there area where these could be connected? Could we do a cost to cure? Is it just functional obsolescence? All great
Yeah.
questions.
They're all great questions. Now, to be honest with you, I've not run across this personally, and it's a really interesting like theory question for appraisers. So I'm just gonna say let's break it down and think about it in terms of, yes, JoAnn is absolutely right. It depends. I would start with like looking at the highest to best use analysis. Is there a legal definition in your area for what constitutes a unit? Are there building codes that say this is a unit, this is not a unit? Maybe look at it that way. Functionally, even though they're not connected internally, if that's kind of common for your market, does a market accept that? That could influence how you look at it, possibly. And I'm thinking of like Outer Banks, North Carolina. You've got these properties that are on stilts by the ocean, and you may have a situation like that where you've got a third floor that doesn't have internal stairway going down to the second floor. I don't know if that's the case, but that's a thing that I would consider. JoAnn mentioned utilities. Where are the utilities for this thing? Are they separately metered? Are there separate water service to each one? That would inform how you would deal with it.
Where's the kitchen and the bathroom?
Where's the kitchen and the bathroom? So there are a lot of things to consider. Also, are there any comparable properties around that have a similar situation, and how do they view that space? It's an incredibly challenging question.
I don't think we're going to come to a final answer because there's too many unanswered things in this scenario.
Yeah, we just don't know enough. Here's what I would say. I would say look at your local building codes, zoning laws, those kind of things, and see if there is a definition of unit. That would be the place I would start. Maybe reach out to the local assessor's office and see how they classify similar properties, if you can find a similar property. I mean, at the end of the day, I would certainly describe the property as it is currently today and make that very clear in your report. How you decide to appraise it as a 2-unit property or possibly a 3-unit property, whatever it works out to being, is going to be...
The third floor doesn't even add any impact. I mean, if the second floor can act as a unit on itself and you have no internal connection, is that third floor even relevant?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and to that question, all right, so we're just going to play this out for just a second. If that third floor is not accessible to the second floor or the first floor, except for exterior access, but it's finished exactly the same, maybe it has the same HVAC unit attached to it, I don't know. Again, we don't have enough information to make the determination, but maybe it has some contributory value. Maybe it's not as much as the other 2 floors. That's really up to the appraiser. Here's the last thing I'm going to say about it, JoAnn. You can add, huh?
I mean, it's not really up to the appraiser. It's up to what they can find in the market.
Absolutely.
I'm always about blaming the market for everything that I do, so I don't want to take any credit.
Yeah. And in order to find yourself not having to have JoAnn come in and mentor you in the state of Colorado, what I would say is be transparent, tell the reader, what you've done, why you've done it, and have support for why you've done it. So I think realistically, Jim, we've run all the way around Robin Hood's barn and said we don't know the answer to the question.
Well, it was definitely a difficult one this time, but we appreciate that. I think it always makes such great conversation. So even if we can't give you the definitive answer, I think it's great to just have these conversations.
if nothing else, maybe we gave you some things to think about for how to maybe drill down and figure out, is this thing one unit or is it two separate, units, whatever.
And 9 times out of 10, the research in your local market is going to be the key to answering that question. What's in your market? What does your market say about it? What data can you find?
It goes back to the very first appraisal class I took back in 1985, JoAnn. We don't make the market. We observe the market and report on the market. Said another way, we reflect what the market is doing. So she's absolutely right. Go to your market, see how the market is responding to it, make your decision, be very clear about what you've done and why you've done it. And I think you should be able to at least get some kind of clarity on how to proceed.
Absolutely. That's my answer to everything. What's your market say?
I love it. Jim Morrison, I think you might want to do a little promotion for the Buzzy Awards nominations.
We've extended the Buzzy Award nomination window for 2 more days. So the end of this day, when you're seeing this Buzzcast, when this is published, will be the final day to get any submissions in. So there's still time to get your nominations in. Remember, we will be giving away 3 passes to Valuation Expo to anybody that nominates somebody. We'll just pick out 3 random winners, and you can nominate, Mentor of the Year, Trainee Mentor of the Year, or Business Mentor. It could be either. So this is a great topic. If you have someone that's sparked in your mind as we were talking about this topic, go to it right now, bit.ly/Buzzy, BUZZY 2025, and we'll put the link below as well.
Yeah, if you're like me out there in appraiser world and you hear this in your car while you're driving, you're not going to remember that URL. But when you get home, hop on the YouTube channel, hop on the Appraisal Buzz page. The URL will be just underneath the video. Click on it. Go make your nominations for the Buzzy Awards for 2025. Jim, do we have anything else we need to cover today?
That's it. Thank you so much, JoAnn. I really appreciate you, and good seeing you in Las Vegas.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
JoAnn, always good to see you. And if we have nothing else, for JoAnn Apostol and Jim Morrison, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzzcast for this week.